Rule number 1. Safes never betray you. People do. That mantra beat in my head with every step I took across the marble floor of Holloway Trust. The hall was cathedral-like, all columns and cold echo, designed to remind mortals that money was holier than God. Red laser beams crisscrossed the vault entrance in neat grids, humming faintly. I crouched low, slid my body sideways, and smirked when the lasers kissed just an inch from my cheek. My name is Raven, 28 years old, professional thief, and tonight was supposed to be my masterpiece. I wasn't nervous. My pulse was steady, my breath measured. To me, breaking into a vault was no different than slipping into a conversation no one wanted you in. You just needed timing, charm, and the right kind of pressure. Safes, unlike men, never lied to your face. They might resist, sure, but with the right coaxing they always opened up. I reached the vault door, a 6-foot slab of reinforced steel, polished to a mirror shine. Beautiful. My gloved hand lingered on its surface, the way someone might trace the jawline of a lover. "Talk to me, darling," I whispered. The keypad blinked at me like a stubborn eye. No problem. I set my tools down, stethoscope, signal jammer, mini drill, the usual toys. I hummed under my breath as I worked, low, tuneless, but calming. The tumblers began to sing back to me, tiny clicks like applause. Minutes later, the last tumbler gave. The green light winked alive. My lips curled. Jackpot. With a slow pull, the door released a hiss of pressurized air, and the vault opened. Rows of safety boxes gleamed under fluorescent strips, but my eyes went straight to the center pedestal. Not cash, not jewels, something far stranger, a sphere, pulsing with a dim, golden light, etched with runes that moved like smoke. What in the... Before I could blink, the air shifted. A ripple ran through the room, like heat over asphalt. And then he stepped out of nothing. Tall. Too tall. His coat swept the marble like liquid shadow. And his eyes, God, his eyes, were molten. Silver rimmed with gold, as if someone had poured wealth straight into his irises. His presence pressed against the room like gravity had doubled. He smiled at me, sharp and amused. "Hello, little thief." His voice was low, velvet with an edge. "You've done all the hard work." How considerate. My muscles locked. Not fear, instinct. I didn't survive this long in my line of work by ignoring alarms in my gut. "Who the hell are you?" He ignored the question. With infuriating calm, he strolled to the pedestal, each footstep silent despite the marble. His hand closed over the sphere. The runes flared at his touch, but instead of resisting, they melted into his skin like they'd been waiting. "Perfect," he murmured. "Hey!" I snapped, stepping forward. "That's mine." He turned back to me, the grin widening, teeth white and predatory. "Is it?" And then, he winked. Actually winked. The next moment, the alarms screamed. Red lights bathed the room, lasers flashing wild. My comms lit up with chatter, guards mobilizing. I lunged for him, knife out, but my hand cut only air. His body shimmered, edges breaking into golden dust. Within a heartbeat, he was gone. Vanished with the artifact clutched to his chest. I stood in the empty vault, the sirens howling louder with every second, red lights strobing against my face. For the first time in years, I wasn't just furious. I was exhilarated. Because someone had just stolen from me, and God help him, I was going to steal it back. By the time I hit the rooftop, my lungs were burning. Sirens wailed below, red and blue strobes washing the city in chaos. I vaulted a ventilation unit, rolled across gravel, and didn't stop, running until the shouts of guards were swallowed by the night wind. New York at 3 a.m. was a maze of steel and neon, and I knew how to vanish in it. I'd built my reputation on disappearing into shadows, on slipping through the cracks of a city too big to notice one thief. Tonight, though, the cracks felt narrower. I ducked into a fire escape, slid down 3 stories, and cut across an alley. Heart still hammering, I forced myself to slow when I reached the riverfront district. One more safe house, one more night. That was the plan. Until I saw him. He sat on a crate outside a derelict warehouse, like he'd been waiting for me. Tall, coat still sweeping like shadow. Posture maddeningly relaxed. He balanced a coin on his knuckles, silver flashing with every roll, his eyes catching the glow of a distant street lamp. "You run fast," he said. Elegant, too. Most mortals panic. "You glide." My hand went to my knife. "You've got a real stalker vibe, you know that?" He laughed, low and smooth, like he found me amusing instead of dangerous. "Don't be offended, I'm only curious. It's rare I get front row seats to such artistry." "Artistry? You mean breaking and entering?" I snapped. "Pretty sure that's called a felony." "Labels?" he said with a shrug. "I prefer performance, and yours is exquisite. That safe would never have yielded without you." I could have ripped it apart, but where's the pleasure in that? I narrowed my eyes. "You could have ripped it apart? What are you, some kind of magician?" His grin deepened. "Demon, actually. Of greed, to be precise. Kael, at your service." He dipped his head in mock politeness. My throat went dry, though I covered it with sarcasm. "Right. Demon. Next you'll tell me you do birthday parties." "I don't. But I'd consider it, for the right price." His teeth flashed. "I appear wherever greed burns brightest. Your heist was practically a beacon." I couldn't resist. Greed. The word slithered into my ears, unsettling and too accurate. My heists weren't about survival anymore. They were about hunger. The next score. The bigger thrill. I folded my arms, keeping distance. "So you're some kind of carrion bird, then? A vulture for thieves?" Scavenger, connoisseur, admirer. His tone was maddeningly pleasant. "Pick whichever word makes you feel less insulted." "I'll stick with parasite." Kael chuckled, clearly delighted. "You wound me, Raven." I froze. "How do you know my name?" "Demons don't bother with doors or introductions. Your reputation precedes you. The banks whisper it, the safes murmur it. And tonight, you shouted it with every lock you touched." His words sent a chill crawling up my spine, though I refused to show it. Instead, I leaned on sarcasm like a shield. "So what, you're my biggest fan? Should I sign your coin?" "Tempting," he said, flipping it one last time before making it vanish into thin air. "But no, I'm not here to collect autographs. I'm here to tell you that the artifact we both touched tonight, it isn't just treasure, it's a key. And every predator in this city will smell it soon." Something in his tone made me believe him, against my better judgment. "And you expect me to care because you want it back." He leaned forward, eyes gleaming like minted metal. "And because you can't get it without me." I hated how my chest tightened at that. The certainty in his voice. The way he looked at me like we were already partners in crime. I turned away, forcing a scoff. "You've got a serious ego problem. And you've got a serious trust problem." He stood, impossibly graceful, coat rippling in the night breeze. "We'll need both, if we're going to survive what's coming." I didn't agree to anything. "No," he said, smiling as though I had. "But you will..." And with that, he vanished again, golden dust scattering across the empty street, leaving me staring at shadows and hating the spark of curiosity curling in my gut. My apartment wasn't much to look at. One room above a discount laundromat, walls stained with the ghosts of old leaks, air perfumed with detergent and cheap noodles. The floor was scattered with blueprints, lockpicks, screwdrivers, half-empty coffee cups. I never invited anyone in. Too personal, too messy, too much of me. So naturally, that's where Kael showed up. I just shut the blinds and kicked off my boots when I heard a ripple, like silk tearing. I turned, knife in hand, and there he was, leaning against my rickety bookshelf as if he'd been waiting all along. His coat looked like it had never touched dust in its life, which made it clash painfully with the clutter of my space. "You break into my home now?" I snapped. "Technically," he said with that infuriating smile. "I don't break into places. I arrive." I groaned, dropping the knife onto the counter with a clatter. You've got 2 seconds before I throw you out the window. Please. His eyes glinted. We both know you can't afford to. I hated that my chest tightened at the truth of it. I did want the artifact back. More than that, I hated how intrigued I was by what he'd said about it. A key. A beacon. Predators. My instincts told me he wasn't bluffing. He stepped closer, weaving through the chaos of my tools with a predator's grace. I propose an alliance. Temporary. You know locks, codes, security. I know enchantments, wards, demons older than dust. Alone, we'll both fail. Together. He spread his hands, like the deal should be obvious. I work alone, I shot back. You'll die alone. His tone didn't rise, didn't harden. It was flat, inevitable. I stiffened. You don't know me. I know enough. You've built a fortress of solitude because people disappointed you, betrayed you. His gaze flicked to the blueprints on my wall, the little rituals of obsession. And now you trust only metal, locks, things that obey rules. But this game you've stepped into? His voice softened, almost pitying. It doesn't obey your rules. The worst part was, he wasn't wrong. I crossed my arms, glaring. So what? I'm supposed to trust you? A self-proclaimed demon? I never said trust. His grin sharpened. I said, survive. Before I could fire back, he got distracted by the hum of my fridge. He tilted his head like a dog hearing music, then yanked the door open. A gust of icy air swept through the room, frost crystallizing instantly. Along the shelves, across the milk carton, up the ketchup bottle, the little light bulb inside flickered and froze solid. Kael's brows rose, amused. Ah. A cold box. Charming. I swore and shoved past him, slamming the door shut. That was my fridge. Now I've got frozen ramen bricks thanks to you. He looked genuinely delighted. I like it here. So many strange contraptions. This world overflows with greed, overflows with idiots. More like, I muttered, wiping condensation from the counter. When I looked up, he was still watching me. Not gloating, not mocking, just watching. There was something unsettling about it. Like he could peel back the sarcasm and see the cracks beneath. I broke eye contact fast. Fine. Temporary. You don't touch my stuff, you don't talk to my neighbors, and you definitely don't open my fridge again. He inclined his head solemnly, though the smile tugging at his mouth ruined the effect. Temporary alliance. Understood. The room felt smaller suddenly, air buzzing with a tension I didn't want to name. Distrust, yes. Wariness, definitely. But also, something electric. A spark under my skin, warning me that letting him stay was a mistake I'd be thinking about for a long time. I told myself it was just strategy. Just survival. But as Kael leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, eyes glowing faintly, in the dim light of my shabby apartment, I knew one thing for sure. This devil wasn't leaving anytime soon. The night air was knife-sharp as I sprinted across the rooftops. The city stretched beneath me, all glass teeth and neon veins, a jungle of steel where one wrong step meant a drop into oblivion. Kael moved with me, silent despite his long coat snapping in the wind. I hated how effortlessly he kept pace. I'd trained for this kind of run my entire life, but he glided like the night itself bent to carry him. Left, I hissed, vaulting a water tank. We landed on a flat rooftop, only to find shadows already waiting. Figures stepped forward, silhouettes against the skyline, guns glinting under the moon. At least 6, maybe more. Hired muscle. My stomach tightened. One of them barked, "Raven West!" "The boss wants a word." "Tell your boss I charge extra for conversation," I shot back, already scanning for exits. The man raised his weapon. Too late for exits. Gunfire cracked, bright flashes tearing the dark. I dove behind an air duct, heart hammering. Kael didn't flinch. He raised a hand, and the bullets bent away mid-air, ricocheting harmlessly into the night. I blinked. Okay. That's new. He smirked. You get used to it. But magic or no, the rooftop was a death trap. I bolted, feet pounding gravel, lungs burning. The edge rushed up fast, skyscraper lights yawning far below. For a second, instinct screamed at me to stop. But stopping meant dying. So I jumped. Gravity ripped me down, air clawing at my skin. My chest seized with panic, until a hand closed around mine, iron strong, unyielding. He swung us onto a lower ledge, momentum slamming me against him. My breath left in a harsh gasp, his arm banded around my waist. For a heartbeat, all I felt was his chest rising against mine, his grip anchoring me to life. Reckless, he murmured, voice close to my ear. I like it. Shut up, I panted, shoving him off as soon as my legs found ground. I didn't need saving. You did. He didn't even pretend otherwise. Before I could argue, another wave of mercenaries scrambled across the roof above. Muzzle flashes lit the night, sparks dancing down around us. Kael's eyes glowed faint silver, and he pulled me with him down a maintenance ladder. We hit a catwalk running. I ducked low, sliding under rusted beams. The world was chaos. Sirens, gunfire, my own ragged breath. But Kael stayed. A step ahead, every move precise, every grip steady when I faltered. Finally, we tumbled onto a fire escape, collapsing against the railing. I pressed my forehead to the cool metal, gasping, chest burning. Sweat stung my eyes. Kael looked infuriatingly composed, though his coat was torn at the sleeve, his hair mussed by the wind. His smile was sharp, amused, like this whole deadly chase had been a dance for his entertainment. You're insane, I muttered. Compliment accepted. I glared at him. But the usual heat wasn't there. My pulse was still racing, but not just from the sprint. He hadn't shielded the artifact this time. He'd shielded me, and for the first time since this whole mess began, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the worst person to have at my back. The blue lamp was the kind of bar that pretended it had secrets worth keeping. Smoke curled lazily under dim lights, the air sticky with jazz and spilled whiskey. The sign outside flickered like a dying star, but inside, the booths were shadows deep enough to hide in. Perfect for a meeting I already regretted. Alice sat in the corner, nursing a glass of red like she owned the place. Same fiery hair, same confident tilt of her chin. Years hadn't touched her swagger. Once, she'd been the closest thing I had to family. Tonight, I wasn't sure if I felt relief or resentment at the sight of her. Raven, she said, standing just enough to kiss my cheek. Still breathing. Always a pleasant surprise. Nice to see you too, I muttered, sliding into the booth across from her. Kael followed, tall enough to draw stares, though he ignored them like they weren't real. He leaned against the wall beside me, eyes flicking over Alice with cool detachment. Is him? Alice asked, voice low but sharp. He's... No one, I said quickly. Kael chuckled. Demon of greed, actually. Kael. A pleasure. Alice blinked, then laughed like she thought he was joking. You haven't changed, Raven. Always picking the strangest partners. I clenched my jaw. He's temporary. She swirled her wine, gaze flicking between us. Temporary has a way of becoming permanent. Be careful. Kael shifted, voice silk wrapped in steel. And what exactly are you offering? Alice met his stare without flinching. Information. People are hunting you both. The artifact painted targets on your backs the size of billboards. But I can help you move it, sell it, vanish with enough cash to retire twice. My chest tightened. That old itch, an exit, clean and final, rose fast. For a heartbeat, I wanted to believe her. Kael didn't. His eyes narrowed, gold catching the smoky light. Too generous. Nobody helps for free. Alice's smile was practiced, polished. You're paranoid. And you're lying, Kael said simply. I cut in before the tension boiled. Enough. Alice and I go way back. She wouldn't burn me. Everyone burns eventually, Kael murmured. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. I forced a laugh, shaky but sharp. You don't know her. I don't need to, he replied. Her pulse, her scent, the way her eyes slide just slightly when she speaks. She's already decided what she'll take from you. Alice raised her brows at me, amusement curling her lips. You're really letting him talk for you now? Heat climbed my neck. No. But maybe he's right about one thing. You've got a hell of a poker face. We sat there in a silence thick enough to choke on. The three of us, circling like players at a chessboard, each waiting for the other to slip. Alice broke it first. Look, Raven, you don't have to trust me. Just remember who's offering you a way out. And who's warning you. Her eyes flicked to Kael. Some deals are more dangerous than others. I swallowed hard, caught between two devils, one I'd grown up with, and one who dropped into my life like a curse. And for the first time, I couldn't tell which one scared me more. The second vault was nothing like the marble palace I'd cracked before. This one hid beneath an old corporate office, stripped of glamour, all concrete and silence. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, but otherwise the room was tomb-still. Perfect conditions. No distractions. Just me, a stubborn lock, and a ticking clock. Kael leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes glowing faintly in the dim. He watched me unpack my kit with the curiosity of someone dissecting a ritual. Do you always lay out your tools like soldiers? He asked. Order saves time, I muttered, lining the picks in neat rows. And time keeps me breathing. He smirked. Charming philosophy. I prefer greed. It always tells the truth. I ignored him, crouched before the vault door, and pressed my stethoscope to the cold steel. The tumblers whispered back in faint clicks. I closed my eyes, breathing slow, letting their rhythm sink into me. And then, Kael moved. He came closer, crouching just behind me, his presence a furnace at my back. Do you hear it? He murmured. I clenched my jaw. You're distracting me. Good. Distraction reveals instinct. His breath brushed my ear. Your instincts are exquisite. I should have shoved him away. Instead, I found myself hyper-aware of the sink between us. His breathing matched mine, unhurried, steady, like he'd woven himself into my rhythm on purpose. The lock gave a soft click. My lips curved despite myself. Almost there. Kael's voice dropped lower. You're remarkable. All this fragility, skin, bone, breath, and yet you bend metal, break walls, command greed itself. I glanced back, irritation sparking, only to find his face inches from mine. His eyes shimmered gold and silver, heat and hunger layered together. For one reckless second, the world shrank to that space between us. My pulse stuttered, my lips parted, and the vault shrieked. Red lights blazed to life. Sirens wailed. I cursed. You jinxed it. Kael laughed, rich and unrepentant. Or maybe you were too distracted. No kidding. I yanked my tools, shoving them into the bag. The lock slammed shut again, steel clanging like a death knell. Boots thundered in the hall above. Voices shouted, orders barked. Kael held out his hand with mock courtesy. Shall we? I smacked it aside, bolting for the emergency hatch at the far end. He followed, laughter spilling like he was enjoying himself far too much. We tore through narrow corridors, alarms echoing like a pack of wolves at our heels. I vaulted a fallen cabinet, slid across slick concrete, lungs burning. Kael, of course, didn't even break stride. Do you mortals always make such a mess? He called over the sirens. Only when demons breathe down our necks. I shot back. We burst through a stairwell door, pounding upward. A guard lunged at me near the landing. I swung my bag into his face, sent him sprawling. Kael snapped his fingers, and the lights above blew out in a shower of sparks. We pushed onto the rooftop, the city yawning wide below, sirens bleeding into the night air. I doubled over, gasping, sweat stinging my eyes. Kael stood beside me, calm as ever, eyes bright with amusement. "Admit it," he said. That was exhilarating. I glared, though my lips betrayed me with the hint of a grin. "You're insufferable." "Correct." "But alive." He tilted his head, gaze glinting. "And so are you. Thanks to me." I rolled my eyes, though the truth of it stung less than it should have. My pulse still thundered, but not just from running. There had been a moment, before the alarms, before the chaos, when I'd leaned into him instead of away. And I hated how much I wanted to feel that moment again. The catacombs smelled of dust and damp stone, a labyrinth carved long before the city above had names. My flashlight beam jittered across walls carved with faded sigils, their meaning long lost. Except, apparently, to the demon walking beside me. Kael's expression was sharper than usual. Humor gone. His eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the runes like molten coins. "This place," he muttered, voice lower than the echo of our steps, "was never meant for mortals." "Good thing I'm not just any mortal," I whispered, though the quip rang hollow in the cavernous dark. The artifact's pull guided us deeper. A hum I felt in my bones more than heard. But we weren't alone. The air shifted, colder, heavier, as if the catacombs themselves held their breath. And then he appeared. The figure stepped from the shadows, tall, broad, with eyes burning like coals under ash. His coat was torn leather, his grin a slash of contempt. I didn't need an introduction to know. Another demon. "Kael," he said, voice like cracking stone. "Still scavenging crumbs? How low you've fallen." Kael's jaw tightened. "Astar." The name tasted like venom. I froze, knife in hand, though I knew it was useless. My instinct screamed, "Predator meeting predator." Astar's gaze slid to me. "And this, a pet thief, how desperate you've become." I bristled, but Kael stepped forward, blocking me from view. His voice was ice. "She's not yours to touch." The tension snapped. Astar raised his hand, and the tunnel exploded in light. Walls cracked, stones splintering as a wave of force hurled us backward. My body slammed against the floor, air torn from my lungs. Kael was already moving, his own power flaring. Silver and gold arcs clashing with Astar's red fire. The catacombs roared under their magic, ceiling stones crashing down. I scrambled to my feet, heart hammering. Too close. Too strong. This was no rooftop skirmish. This was gods colliding. "Stay back!" Kael barked, his voice distorted by power. I wanted to argue, to insist I wasn't helpless. But another blast ripped through the tunnel, and I barely rolled clear before stone shattered where I'd stood. Fear clawed up my throat. For the first time, I felt the edge of my mortality sharp and merciless. Kael struck again, his hand sweeping arcs of molten light. The force slammed into Astar, driving him against the far wall. The demon laughed, even as cracks spidered across the stone behind him. "You've grown soft," Astar snarled. "Protecting mortals now?" Pathetic. Kael's answer was a roar, not words. He lunged, their powers colliding in a blinding flash. I shielded my eyes as the tunnel shook, debris raining down. When the light faded, both demons staggered. Astar sneered, retreating into the shadows, his laughter echoing until it vanished. But Kael dropped to one knee. Blood, black and shimmering, stained his sleeve. "Kael!" I ran to him, ignoring the fear still rattling my bones. I grabbed his arm, tried to steady him. "You're hurt." He looked up at me, eyes dimmer than I'd ever seen them, but his smile was still there, faint, stubborn. "Better me than you." The words landed heavier than the stone dust settling around us. For a moment, the catacombs were silent except for our ragged breathing. My hands shook as I pressed against the wound, though I doubted I could help a creature like him. Still, I tried, because he had protected me. Not the artifact, not his pride, me. And for the first time, respect slid under my skin. Unwelcome and undeniable. Rain drummed against the window pane, steady and relentless, as if the night itself wanted to drown the city. My apartment smelled of damp concrete and burnt coffee, the kind of place that only felt safe because no one sane would come looking here. But someone had. Alice stood in the center of the room, her coat dripping on my rug. She looked restless, eyes darting between me and the shadowed figure of Kael slumped in the chair by the wall. He was still weakened from the fight in the catacombs, skin pale beneath its unnatural glow. "You look like hell," Alice said, trying for humor. "Both of you." "Cut it," I snapped. "Why are you here?" Her smile was too polished, too easy. "I told you, I can help you. I know people. Safe houses, clean routes out of the city." Kael stirred, his voice hoarse but sharp. "She lies." Alice's gaze flicked to him, annoyance flashing in her eyes before she returned to me. "You're really letting him poison your mind?" I folded my arms. "He's not wrong. Something's off with you. You show up out of nowhere, offering help. Too much help. Feels like bait." She sighed, as if I were the one being difficult. "Raven, come on. I've had your back since we were kids. Who got you out of that mess in Brooklyn? Who?" The crash came before she could finish. My door burst inward, splinters flying. Boots thundered across the floor, flashlights flaring in my eyes. "Police!" Someone shouted. "Hands where we can see them." My blood iced. I turned to Alice. She didn't look surprised. "Alice." My voice cracked. "You sold me out." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. "I did what I had to. They offered me a deal. I walk away clean if I bring you in. I didn't want it to be like this." My heart twisted, rage and disbelief tangling until I couldn't breathe. "You could have warned me. You could have—" "You don't get it." Her voice rose, desperation breaking through the mask. "You don't stop, Raven. You never stop. And anyone near you gets burned. I wasn't going to let that happen to me." Kael rose unsteadily, gripping the chair for balance. His power flickered faint, but his glare was fire. "Step away from her," he growled. The officers advanced, weapons ready. Alice backed toward them, face tight. I didn't think. I moved. I grabbed Kael's arm, hauling him toward the window. "We're leaving." Finally he rasped, a shadow of a grin on his lips. Bullets shredded the glass as we crashed through it, rain exploding around us. Kael's magic flared just enough to soften the fall, though when we hit the alley below, the shock rattled every bone in my body. He collapsed against the wall, bleeding through his sleeve, breath shallow. I crouched beside him, soaked to the skin, heart pounding. Above us, sirens wailed, shouts echoing through the night. My apartment, the only place I'd let myself pretend was mine, was gone. So was Alice. I pressed my hand to Kael's wound, trembling with anger I couldn't swallow. She was supposed to be my friend. His gaze found mine, tired but steady. "Now you know. Greed isn't the only hunger humans serve. Survival makes traitors of them all." I clenched my jaw, fury burning through the ache in my chest. She'd chosen her deal. Fine. But so would I. Because if Alice thought betrayal would end me, she had no idea what I was capable of when I had nothing left to lose. The factory stank of oil and rust, every corner humming with the low growl of machinery that hadn't been serviced in years. Broken catwalks loomed overhead, pipes dripped black water, and somewhere, in the distance, sirens wailed like wolves scenting blood. We'd barely stumbled inside when the trap snapped shut. Figures melted out of the shadows, mercenaries with rifles, police, in body armor, and behind them, glowing eyes I recognized instantly. Astar. His grin was jagged, sharp as the steel around us. "You've run far enough, Kael. Hand over the key, and maybe I'll let the little thief live." Kael stepped forward, unsteady but defiant, over my dead body. Gladly, Astar growled. The first bullets flew. I dove behind a conveyor belt, the clang of lead sparking against metal. Kael flared with light, silver and gold arcs bending the barrage aside. I leapt up, hurling a wrench at the nearest mercenary. It cracked against his helmet, sending him sprawling. Kael barked, "Left!" And I spun just in time to slash at another attacker. Our movements synced without thought. His power covered my blind spots. My knives cut down anyone who slipped past him. It was messy, brutal, but it worked. The factory floor became a storm of chaos. Smoke grenades hissed, filling the air with choking haze. Sparks rained from shattered lights. Somewhere above, Astar's laugh echoed, deep and cruel. Then he dropped down, landing with the force of a collapsing wall. His magic roared out, scarlet fire blasting the floor apart. The shockwave hurled me back, ribs screaming as I hit the railing of a catwalk. Kael was there before I could fall, his hand closing around my wrist. He yanked me to my feet, his body shielding mine as fire split the air. "You all right?" He rasped. "Ask me later," I gasped. "When we're not dying, we charge together." He hurled light like molten spears. I ducked and struck, steel meeting flesh. Every movement threaded into the other. We weren't partners. We were a single organism, two halves of a machine built for survival. Astar's power slammed into Kael, driving him to his knees. My stomach lurched. I could see the strain, the blood already soaking his sleeve. "No," I screamed, lunging forward. I hurled a smoke canister into Astar's face, buying us a heartbeat. Kael surged up, grabbing my hand. "This way!" We sprinted through the choking fog. Shouts followed us, boots clanging on steel. Ahead, a heavy hatch gaped open in the floor. An old maintenance chute, dark and bottomless. Our only way out. Gunfire sparked against the walls as we neared the edge. Kael's magic flickered, sputtering with exhaustion. I felt the moment we both realized we wouldn't make it clean. And then, time stopped. Through the smoke, his eyes caught mine. Gold and silver, fierce and burning, even dimmed with pain. His hand found my face, warm despite the chaos, and before I could think, before I could breathe, his mouth was on mine. The world dissolved. The gunfire, the smoke, the blood, they blurred into nothing but heat and fire and the taste of him. It wasn't careful or polite. It was desperate, wild, like he was sealing a promise we hadn't dared speak. When he pulled back, my breath was ragged, my heart an inferno. "Together," he whispered. "Together," I answered. We jumped. The hatch swallowed us, darkness rushing up like a tidal wave. Bullets ricocheted above, Astar's roar shaking the metal, but none of it mattered. His hand was locked in mine, unbreakable. We landed hard, tumbling through dust and grit, lungs burning. But we were alive. Alive and still holding on to each other like nothing in the world could pry us apart. For the first time, the thought didn't terrify me. It thrilled me. The city looked different at dawn. Softer, almost forgiving. The skyline glowed pink and gold, reflected in the quiet river along the pier. For once, no sirens chased us. No footsteps echoed behind, just the sound of waves lapping against wood, the smell of salt and exhaust mixing in the cool morning air. I leaned against the railing, my body aching from every bruise, but alive. Beside me, Kael stood with the artifact in his hands. The sphere pulsed faintly, its runes shifting like smoke trapped in glass. "It's ours," he said quietly. I studied the glow, waiting for the surge of triumph I'd always imagined. Instead, I felt tired, empty in a way that wasn't bad. More like release. "It doesn't feel like treasure," I admitted. "Feels like chains." Kael's eyes flicked to mine. He turned the sphere once, then twice, as if weighing its worth. Finally, he sighed and set it gently on the railing. "Then we don't need it." The word startled me more than the magic ever had. "You? Walking away from greed?" His smile was faint, rueful. "Greed has its price, but maybe I've already stolen what matters." Something warm curled in my chest before I could smother it. I looked at him. tall, battered, infuriating, and knew he meant me. We left the artifact on the pier, the runes fading with the rising sun. Let the city fight over it. Let the demons and mercenaries tear each other apart. We had something else, and apparently, that something else was ice cream. Because the next thing Kael did was march to the tiny stand opening near the pier. A kid barely out of high school manned the cart, still yawning, scooping vanilla into cones. Kael slammed a gleaming gold coin onto the counter. "One of those," he declared, pointing. The kid stared at the coin, then at Kael, then at me. Sir, we don't take pirate treasure." I groaned, dragging Kael by the sleeve. "He's new to Earth economics." Kael looked offended. "It's pure gold." "Yeah, and totally unspendable, unless you want to explain to the IRS where you got it," I muttered. I shoved a crumpled 5 into the kid's hand and yanked Kael away with a cone in each hand. He licked his with cautious interest, then broke into a smile that almost made me forgive his idiocy. "Cold, sweet, I like it." I laughed, for real this time. Not the sharp, bitter laugh of survival, but the kind that left my chest light. We sat on the edge of the pier, feet dangling above the water, sharing silence that wasn't empty anymore. For the first time in years, the weight pressing on my ribs had lifted. I thought of Alice, of betrayals, of nights running across rooftops alone, of safes that never lied but never held me either. And then I thought of Kael, catching me when I fell, standing against Astar, bleeding and still smiling like I was worth it. For once, I let myself believe it. I glanced at him, at the ridiculous way he devoured ice cream like. It was divine revelation, and a quiet certainty settled in my bones. For the first time in my life, I trusted someone. Maybe he was the worst partner imaginable, but he was the best ally I'd ever known.